offshoring a lot of energy-intensive industry. In fact, the role of manufacturing in America has shrunk radically in recent years. So you would think that our energy efficiency would be improving, whereas in fact we're making negative progress. So climate change and energy efficiency and clean energy are kind of one issue. And if you look at the world, the United States is producing about 22 tons of CO2 equivalent per capita today. Europe is about 10 tons, so they're under half of us. China is about 6 tons. They produce more in the aggregate, but on a per capita basis, which is a fair way to measure it, they produce a lot less. And India is the standard at about 1.5 tons per capita compared to our 22. And if we're going to save the U.S. and the rest of the world from infrastructure perdition, which is kind of what we're talking about, plus the death of nature, the whole world's going to have to get closer to where India is than where the U.S. is. The U.S. has to take its carbon emissions down by 85 to 90%, which of course is impossible given the short-term bias in our economic system. So the problem is that when you listen to speakers on this topic, they are all speaking incrementally, and they're not leaping forward and looking at what we really need to do and then kind of backcasting the future to see how to get there. So none of the things that have been talked about, I mean, right now still in the United States today, about 75% of electrical energy is generated by hydrocarbon sources. It shifted heavily from coal toward gas, and of course oil continues to be a factor, but it's still 3/4 of electricity energy that's used is from dirty hydrocarbons, and that's not going to change. You know, there's massive subsidies flowing from federal government and state governments into the hydrocarbon industry. They're baked in now, they're part of the everydayishness, and they're long-lasting. So long-dated investments in hydrocarbons can be made with confidence, whereas a long-dated investment in renewables can't be because A, the subsidies are small, and B, they're short-term in orientation. So what we need is government spending to help valid technologies get to scale, frankly, not to invent new technologies. I don't mind new technologies, but the real problem is that the mature hydrocarbon technologies are so efficient that the cost to compete with them is so low that new technologies simply can't compete. This is no level playing field. So this is a very serious situation. My biology teacher in high school told me that nature never jumps, but I think Sandy is an example of nature leaping. So there's plenty of evidence that nature is not continuous, it's discontinuous, and with what's going on with respect to methane and filling up the oceans and their capacity to absorb carbon and so forth suggests we're headed toward a precipice. We'll talk more about it.
Carter, thank you very much. Well, thank you to the panel. Unless there's any burning questions from the audience, I just want to kick things off with, you're right about the step change. I couldn't agree more, Carter. You know, these incremental changes always feel as if we're just sort of wasting time. But on the other hand, how do we do this? Because we all live, over 60% of us live in urban environments. 3 billion of us live in cities that are at risk of sea level rise and other flood damage. That number's soon going to be to 6 billion by the time we reach 2025. And of course, we've got people such as Malik here who are responsible for living in these cities. How do we sort of get from here, where we have to look after our people, come up with something sensible, an adaptation, a sensible adaptation that's sustainable enough to get us from here to there, whilst make a big step change? I mean, is it something like we need a big mindset that cities become temporary and we move around a bit more? So these are the sort of questions. How do we get from people like Mel, us here in New York, we had this huge flood, how do we sort of keep the engine of New York and other cities going? Because it's that engine that's going to help us come up with clever ideas and clever investment opportunities that people will make because they're profitable, make because they're easy, make because it's the right thing to do, and it just happens to also be part of that great step change. We're never going to get people to invest in a huge, great step change. We'll get them to do it because it's easy, sensible, and helps maintain their lifestyle. So how do we get all this going? That's my big burning question. I don't know who to ask it except you four.
Well, let me tell you something that's going on right now. New York City school buildings Many of them are 50 or more years old. In these school buildings, they have fluorescent light fixtures that are loaded with PCBs. These PCBs are leaking. They are affecting our students. Just last week, a school building had to be evacuated because of the leakage. One of the things that we're trying to get is replacement for all of these light fixtures. The controller of the city of New York, John Liu, has proposed what he calls the Green Apple Bond. He would issue a special municipal bond fund which would allow people to buy bonds. The money from these bonds would be used to remove the fixtures and replace them with more efficient fixtures, would enable them to do other repairs in the schools to make them more energy efficient. It is predicted that if this bond issue goes through and if we get this done, that the city of New York would save almost $400 million over the years, that the energy costs in the schools would come down dramatically, and the energy cost in school is the largest single energy cost city government has. We have thousands of buildings. Each one has to be lit. Each one has to be heated. Each one has problems with their environmental protections now. And with this program that we hopefully will be able to get started, we'll be able to resolve some of those problems. And that's just one step in the way we can go.
Fantastic. I like that because, you know, I know sometimes I feel as if we could be sort of paralysed by the sheer scale of the problem. And we can't allow that to happen. I do feel, I mean, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, that all these, as you say, it's a big, important investment, but it does feel like a small step. But all those little steps happening globally all at the same time, with your help, feel like it's going to make a difference. I mean, thanks, Mel, and it feels like the right... Anybody else?
Sure, so I just thought, in terms of the stepwise approach, one thing that we have to do then is change the narrative a little bit. And
yes.
We haven't been entirely successful about talking about climate change as a motivating factor for people to do things. So, you know, change the narrative. Let's talk about self-reliance, for example. Like that, to me, is priceless. You can say, you know, being an energy system that's self-reliant is priceless. And we can talk about other co-benefits associated with being self-reliant, reducing your fuel bill massively, whether it's in a school or an island of Manhattan. And there are ways to get there. You know, we've worked, launched a program called the 10 Islands program, and basically the idea is to get these islands that are dependent upon fossil fuel being brought on island by ships, which is quite unbelievable in terms of expense, or fossil fuels. Well, how do you do that? Well, there's some very basic things. One of them is tackle your energy system first and foremost in terms of both how much you use and then what you use. So even in New York, the microgrid systems are quite impressive that have been tested out there. Whether you're looking at kind of the Ithaca system or even the New York University system in Washington Square over microgrid, they are big projects. They're expensive. They need impact investing, but they are incredible in terms of return on that investment. So why isn't it happening more? You know, why isn't it more of a motivational factor to be self-reliant, especially in the wake of something like Sandy? And I think there are other pieces, you know, the transport system, efficiency of the grid itself, you know, demand response. You can use a lot of machine-to-machine technologies to automate those systems. And then also just look at the lighting in Manhattan. The LEDs are one of the only lighting systems that actually worked during the after post-Sandy. So there are technology solutions out there. I just think the narrative around why we roll out those technologies is not working.
Fantastic. I mean, I must say that the narrative is the thing that excites me because you know, you can't motivate people by saying, oh, we're all going to hell in a handcart, we're all doom and gloom, we've screwed up. You know, you motivate people by finding ways and solutions and little tricks, and I think the narrative is a thing that's very close to my heart. Peter?
No, I'll agree. I'll agree with both what you said, Hillary, and also what you said, Carter, earlier. Carter's very good at sort of haranguing people, and you know, I've been on many panels with him before, and he always sort of a man of darkness, but also a man of reason and a man of ambition at the same time. It's a very